Alright, so I'm going to give you kind of an overview of open government in Ontario. It's a relatively new initiative. It was officially announced by Premier Wynne in 2013. So we've been at it for about 3 years. And it's part of Ontario's commitment to being the most open and transparent government in all of Canada. So in order to achieve this, Premier Wynne put together the Open Government Engagement Team to go across Ontario to get feedback from people to see what the best ways are to open up government. So they came back, they came up with approximately 40 recommendations on how we can improve openness in the government of Ontario. And the Open Government Office was created to facilitate this transformation and to drive the change of openness in Ontario. So this exercise created 3 pillars of open government. As you can see here, we've got, too soon. We jumped too soon. Okay. The 3 pillars are open dialogue, open information, and of course, open data. Buttons? Are we pushing buttons now? Okay. Thanks, Paul. So the first one we're going to talk about is open dialogue. So open dialogue is basically just bringing people in to the workings of government. So getting opinions and feedback and consulting with people of Ontario to deliver programs, create policies, basically involving you in the inner workings of government, which has been very successful so far. On the Open Government website, on ontario.ca, you can actually find the consultations directory, which includes all consultations that are currently being conducted in Ontario from the various ministries. And you can also see ones that have passed, and you can see what's been done with the information from the consultation. So you have access to the reports, you can see what the feedback was, and you can see what kind of things people are being consulted on. And we've also created a public engagement framework, which you can also find on the Open Government website. And it's basically a how-to for government agencies and government ministries on how to consult with the public. And you can find this framework on the Open Government website as well. Finding the right buttons now. So open information is the second pillar. This one is still in its early stages. We've only just put together our plan, and it's actually been included in our mandate letter, which you can also find online. I'd highly recommend going to check it out, seeing what the plan is. So open government is basically, open information is basically helping people understand how government works. So this means publishing all of our reports, any analyses that are done, presentation decks, things that will help people understand how government works. And again, this is still in its early stages, so we'll definitely have to keep an eye on how things progress, because I think it's going to be really exciting. Bear with me. Pages. There we go. Culture change. So this is something that my fellow public servants will definitely understand. Government in general, very close to the vest, very protective of its data, protective of its information, and with good reason. We deal with a lot of confidential, secure, private information that may not necessarily be appropriate for public release. However, the important thing is being able to differentiate between what's private, what's public, what could create a risk, what may possibly be available for people to actually use. So that's a big part of the culture change that we're working on right now, is getting the government more comfortable with letting go of some of its data. So we're starting small. We're starting, data sets that, don't pose any risk, part of the risk assessment. This is something that we can actually allow the public to have access to. And as part of our, we'll talk about it later, our data inventory, just getting them to release a list. Just tell us what you have. You don't have to release it. Just tell us what you have. So again, getting comfortable with that type of public availability of the data. And also making the general public more aware, creating a shift of the public's view of government. Because right now, government, maybe, again, it can be seen as closed off, as very private. So we're hoping that people will see the open data initiative, see the open information, see the open dialogue, and say, yeah, this is something I really want to get involved with. And that's where you guys come in. Spread the word, tell your friends. Getting people involved in using the data, in accessing the information, and really helping us kind of change the image of what government is right now. Open data. It's just kind of a pretty picture intro slide. This is government right here. This is all Word. This is what our government decks usually look like. So you guys are lucky you got pictures. So what is open data? Open data is kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're doing for open government right now. It's basically all of the data, facts, figures, statistics, anything you can put in a table, a map, a chart, a figure, anything basically that can be analyzed. It's usually raw data. So it's something that someone can download, go in, manipulate, play around with, come to their own conclusions. Not to be confused with open information, in which case the analysis has already been done, it's in a report. So we like to make the raw data available so people can draw their own conclusions rather than just relying on what they read in the report. So there's three essential elements of open data. The first one is the open license. Again, typical government license has a terms of use. It says you can only use this data under this circumstance for this reason. Open government license is very different. Open government license says, here's our data, have fun. So basically you can do whatever you want, as long as it's legal. But you can do whatever you want with the data. So you can analyze it, share it, publish it, commercialize it, embed it in an app, manipulate it, run projections. Anything your little heart desires, you can do with our data. Second element is open access. Data sets should be available to the public. Makes sense. No one's going to be able to access a folder on your shared drive in your cubicle at Queen's Park. So we want to put it online, free for everyone to access. We don't ask for any information in order to access the data. So if you want to access a table, we don't say, okay, sure, you can have that data. Just fill in your name, social insurance number, birth date, any of that. So we can't collect any of that information. So in order to make it accessible, it's open. Anyone can access it. There's no restrictions on who can access it or how. Finally, open format. So the data sets need to be accessible in a machine-readable format, so anyone on any platform can use it. So it can't be, you can only open it with this program, that's this version on this computer. It has to be accessible to everybody. Hence the open part of open data. All right, so we'll take you on a journey of open data. So we started off, soft launch 2012, slowly just introducing a few data sets just to see kind of how things were working out there. After our official launch in 2013, it took a little while, but we eventually got our launch of our first data inventory. So in 2014, we asked the ministries, what data sets do you have that could possibly be published? So they gave us a list of data sets they had that they could possibly release. And of this, we actually posted that list online and asked people to vote. Out of this information, what do you want to see? 3 guesses what the top voted data set was. Anybody? Close, but not quite.
Federal.
Yeah, that is federal. Thanks, Bob. The top voted data set was public servant salaries, which is funny because that's kind of already available. But, so yeah, the first 2 were financial. A lot of the rest of them, surprisingly, were traffic related. So people are really interested in traffic patterns and bridge conditions. Who knew? People, I guess, commuting, people got to get around. So in 2015, we started public consultations for the Open Data Directive, which Paul's going to talk about a little bit more. And since then, 500 data sets have been posted, more than 500, and more continue to be posted all the time. So I highly recommend checking out the data catalog on ontario.ca. There's always new stuff coming up, and with the inventories, which is our last data point here, we're currently collecting inventories from all of the ministries in the Ontario government. So again, we've asked for a list, except this time, rather than what can you publish, this time we're saying, what do you have? What do you own? What do you manage? So it doesn't have to be published. It may not be published, but we need to know what you have. And I think you're going to possibly go into it a little more. You are now. So Paul's going to talk a little bit more about the directive and what the data is being used for and various other delightful things.
Thank you. It's a really quiet group. Normally, I like to do sort of a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of time today, so probably not going to work, but we'll stick around after. So if you do have questions or concerns or pointed criticism, feel free to come chat with us at the end. Please do, in fact, because that helps going to skip ahead to the end too, really briefly. Spoiler. There was talk about open dialogue and new ways of engaging with the public. So one of the things we're doing is creating some commitments around open government. We're actually applying our principles of public engagement framework to do this. So we're actually co-creating these. So we haven't come up with a pre-selected list and we're pretending to ask you what we should do. We are legitimately, the ideas were submitted by people in the public and now people can vote on ideas. So this will help inform the next round of planning for our commitments in the next year for what we're going to do as an open government office. So you can basically tell us what to do next year. If you go to ontario.ca/open, find the link to the consultation and go there and vote. So I highly encourage you to do that after. And I'm going to repeat this at the end to really get it into your heads. Okay. So the Open Data Directive. This is the sort of fruition of our work last year. We did a lot of consultations both online and in the public, which is kind of unique. This is a directive, so it's an internal policy document. Normally, they're not even published publicly, let alone consulted publicly. So it was a unique take. We did some online consultations, and we made significant revisions to it based on the feedback, and then we posted those changes. So again, another exercise in being open about how we are open as a government. So the directive got approved last fall, and it took effect this April 1st. And it's basically mandatory. So it says for the people in ministries and the people in actually government agencies as well, which would be WSIP, LCBO, all these different arm's length agencies, the new default is basically open by default. That's the key principle of the directive. So instead of your first thought when you have a data set being, I'm going to hoard this, and if somebody makes me, I'm going to release it, it's now, I'm going to release this, but then you sit there and think, well, can I release this? Because again, sometimes we can't, right? It could be people's medical information. We're not going to release that as open data. We can't release that as open data. It's against the law. And there's different exceptions like that. So the directive spells out how to do this, gives us some requirements. There's a couple ones highlighted on the right there. The first one that's probably, I'll focus on two that are maybe more interesting. The first one's the inventory. So we have asked every ministry, tell us what data you have. We're going to post that to the public. We're starting to release those now on Ontario.ca. So if you go to Ontario.ca/data, you'll end up with the catalog. Most of the data in the catalog right now is open data, so you can download it. But we're starting to add these data sets that we know about them, but we haven't released them yet. So we may be able to release some of them if we just haven't done it yet. Some they can be marked, we will be opening this. But some of them are also marked restricted. We can't open them. It's against the law, or we don't have the right to do it. Contract, things like that. The second one is publishing data sets. So before we were publishing data sets kind of proactively, but there was no guiding policy. There was just a little bit, there was the political will, but no uniform policy. So now that we have this directive, basically, we as public servants in the ministries are required to publish our data sets in a timely manner. This doesn't mean they're all going to come out next week or by the end of the year, right? It takes a lot of effort to get a data set open. Can be surprising, actually. It surprised me when I took this job, just how much it can take. But again, we do have to assess them for risk. We don't even want to be releasing indirect identifiers for people, right? There's preparation of the data. There's all sorts of processes to go through, and there's only so much capacity within the government to do this. So really, it's a prioritization effort. And so this is another area where people can help out by connecting with your ministries or connecting with us. There's a contact us button at the bottom of the catalog. You can email us at opendata@ontario.ca. We're both on Twitter. And tell us what data you want. And it helps. We'll forward it to the ministry, and it will help them as they prioritize their efforts. So there are some exemptions. These are them. These are spelled out in the directive. So privacy, we can't release people's personal information. We're not going to. If you want people's personal information as a data set, we're not. I would suggest not asking. And I feel like people are sensitive to privacy too, so I think people are probably nodding happily about that. Security as well. So we're not. If there's a database of passwords somewhere, not going to be released as open data. Confidentiality. Certain stuff is protected as treated as confidential by law. You can think like solicitor-client privilege or cabinet confidences, not going to be released as open data. And contractual and legal limitations. So it might be against the law, or we might have bought data from somebody and we didn't buy the right to share it as open data. So if we didn't buy that, we can't do that. So I pulled out some examples into the presentation. You can see them. I think the material will probably be shared after. So public accounts, this is an example of what I would say is a high value data. And the thing I like about this one is it's focused on transparency. So the public accounts have been released by law for a number of years. This is the actual cash flow statement, basically, of the government. But originally, just as a printed book that literally gets dropped onto a table in the legislature by law. And more recently, also as a PDF accompanying that book. But last year, for the first time, we helped release it as machine-readable data. So if you were looking at the public accounts book and you're like, I don't think these numbers add up, you could just do it in Excel, add the numbers up, and see, hey, it actually does add up. And it did. So I think that's a big win in terms of transparency and accountability. Nobody's probably building an app from this, but it really is a good way to be more transparent as it goes. Population projections, this one's kind of an interesting case because it's based on historical data, but it's actually projecting into the future. So it's imaginary data, it's projected data, but the thing about releasing it is people in every government ministry need to project into the future and say how much are we going to have to spend in 10 years. So because this is released as open data, it's very easy for all those people to use the same projections. Then all the public servants in the cities have to make similar projections. Now they're all working from a common base. So I know for a fact that the civil servants that work for the government of Ontario that could get this by emailing the ministry, just go to the open data catalog because it's easier. So public servants are actually a big user of open data as well. And then go train stations. People love transportation data. And it helps every day, right? I use transit apps, so I'm sure everybody here does. So you can see our catalog on the right. Again, it's ontario.ca/open. Nope, ontario.ca/data. Ontario.ca/open is our homepage. Check it out. There will be about 4,200-ish data sets in the inventory when it's finally released. So on Ontario.ca, it will just be ministry data. It will be a smaller number than that. But then when you add on the agencies who are releasing their own, it adds up. And it won't be exactly that number because people might find duplicates and things like that. But so if there's an agency you're really excited by, or working in a space you're interested in, say transportation, check out their websites. You can see what data they have and help them prioritize by emailing them. And then some stats. We have 35,000, 350,000 plus downloads. It's more than that, but that's the latest confirmed number I have. And we have about 100 data sets marked as sort of will be made open, and then 550-ish that have been made open. So I mentioned agencies are doing this too. The Directive requires them to. Here's some examples. WSIB's site is great. If you're interested in worker-related data or injury data, they have a very comprehensive inventory and are looking to release data and to get feedback on how to do that. Some other examples here as well. And you can find a list of all of these agencies. If you just want to see what they are on Ontario.ca, just search for agency accountability, and there's a list of links to all of their websites. So the Open Government Partnership. I mentioned we have a voting exercise on right now. I have a minute and a half to sell you on this. So go vote, first of all. This is a group of 70-ish national entities who form a partnership around open government. What they do is every year they make some commitments that are co-created with the public. They commit to implementing them in a year, and a year later the OGP, the Open Government Partnership, hires independent third-party auditors to check the results and say, hey, yes, you did these three, didn't really do this one. So again, as I mentioned, usually countries, they launched a subnational partnership. Just recently we applied and we're one of 15 subnational governments to be accepted. I think the largest one. You can see the list here. So we're doing this exercise right now. So we just did a stage where we asked the public to submit ideas, and we got many, both from civil society and also from public servants for sure. And right now we're at a stage where we're asking people to help us select a shortlist, basically. After that, we're going to be doing another step where we're going to workshop the shortlist and really develop them into full-fledged implementable commitments. It's one thing to say release high-value data, but how do you measure success? So we're going to workshop that sort of thing. So if you go to ontario.ca/open, you can find the consultations directory. There's a link to the consultation there, and you can vote. Please do tell us what to do.
Tell your friends to share it all. We're open. This is what we do.
All right, and we're just about exactly out of time. So if you do want to contact us ever, we're happy to hear from you. OpenData@ontario.ca. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone have questions? Are we passing this down?
Just a quick question about your previous slide. Among your, not competitors, but your fellow open data-minded people, if you could be any one of them, who would you be? Like who's out in front in this arena?
So I was in a conference call this morning, and the federal government said that we were out in front. So I'm gonna brag about that. Humble brag for just a minute. Not really humble. But it's just the way now, really. Open government and open data. For internal presentations, we have.
You're talking about rankings. That's our commitment and assessment of commitment. So who's getting the gold stars? Curious to know. Who's out in front?
So I'll answer that with a Google search for you. There are a number of efforts to sort of quantify that. So Open Data Census, Open Cities Index. So I would suggest, rather than me telling you who I think is great, somebody has actually done the math. So the Open Cities Index is one, which is in Ontario, but then also the charter, the census, Open Data Census.
Awesome. Thanks.
I have a comment on that. I just read a study today, and actually the European Commission just published an index for them. So the number one country is South Korea, the US. In Europe, it's France, the UK, and the Netherlands, and Japan as well. Is for Asia, and yeah, so the US is pretty much leading.
I was wondering if you had heard about any notable or innovative applications of the data that's been released. Heard of anything?
Yeah. Let me try to picture. Okay. So we have one data set that is notable because it was I mentioned sometimes it can take a lot of work to release a data set as open data. This one was the quickest, which was the list of flu shot clinics in Ontario, which powers a map on Ontario.ca, so it was already in useful format, was already going to the public. They turned it around very fast as open data. That one's used in an app called, I believe, IamSick.ca, so that which pulls in a whole bunch of different health-related data and helps people find health services. As well, Map Your Property is a startup in Ontario that uses a lot of the sort of the geographical data, so watershed data, zoning data, all that sort of thing, so that people, when they're thinking of buying a property, own a property, want to build on a property, can sort of consolidate the typical searches where they have to go to various city halls, regional halls, all that into sort of one useful app. So those are a couple of examples that we've come across in the province. One of the principles was open access, so we don't and won't ask people in advance of downloading the data what their intentions are. We do try to find out afterwards. At sessions like this, we love to hear about how people are using open data. So if you are using open data, I would love to hear about it. And that's that.
Oh, it's okay. I'll just jump in. I just wanted to know if one of the slides said there was like 32 restricted data sets. What are those 32 restricted data sets?
I mean, what are they?
Yeah, like why?
What is the list of 32, or why are they restricted?
Why? What?
Okay.
In that section.
So data can be restricted for a wide variety of reasons. Paul identified some of the exemptions, which was here. There we go. So it's usually, most often, it's privacy issues. So it contains personal information or identifiable information for specific individuals. So privacy is a huge thing for us. Especially with open data, we want to make everything as open as possible. We also want to protect people's privacy as well. So that's a big one that's coming up during all of our data inventories. Security is another one. I actually used to work for the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, and there's correctional institution data that, security features of the correctional institution. I don't know if that's something we want to be publishing online. So anything that could potentially compromise security would also play a role in mixing that data from the data sets. And again, confidentiality. So any kind of confidential information that we've collected wouldn't be included in that. So those are and the legal and contractual limitations are another one. Those are the big ones. It is something that we're keeping an eye on because a lot of people might say that their data set's restricted, but we can redact some things, we can de-identify some of the information. So it's again working with the ministries and working to figure out, well, if we take this information out, then can we release it? So it's an ongoing procedure, but there definitely are some data sets that have to be restricted.
And if you go to the catalog, part of the inventory exercise is to be transparent about those reasons, so you can actually look up those restricted data sets and see which exemption applied, and then a brief rationale as to why it applied.
Got time for 2 more questions?
Last one.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, there's a lot. Okay. Why don't we go back there?
We'll be hanging around as well later on if you want to ask us questions. We can talk about this all day.
Just a comment about the confidentiality. It seems like when there's political will, that can be brushed aside because the Sunshine List of who makes what salary over $100,000 publishes the actual person's name, which has issues with confidentiality and privacy and collective agreements. So it seems that sometimes when there's political will, that can be opened up a little bit more than maybe people would expect. And also, just to give an example, at the municipal level, the health inspections of restaurants are by establishment. So I know exactly what happened at that establishment. That's again confidentiality and privacy that for the public good, with the right political will, we're opened up.
There is definitely a level of discretion with regards to public interest and public safety and all these other things. Because if they're like, well, man, there are these 60 restaurants and they're just terrible for you, but we're not going to tell you what they are. So, in the interest of public safety and public information, that can be waived when necessary. So,
I'll add too that, so we have a data set that lists of registered religious officials, which is the names of registered religious officials in Ontario, which sounds like it might be people's personal information, name, religion, all that. But because it's in a business capacity under the privacy legislation in the province, that's actually business info. So, so if you think restaurant inspections as well, that sort of inspection data typically is considered personal information of this, so it would fall under that sort of privacy.
One more?
I was also just wondering if you're concerned at all about your data liability, and what I mean by that is when aggregate data is used to create profiles of people that can then be traced back to personal identifiable information, and I was just wondering, how are you dealing with that?
Yes. We are very effective. So we work in Ontario. The Office of the Information Privacy Commissioner is the commissioner in charge of all of this, and they just put out some guidelines on de-identification of data. They provided feedback on the Open Data Directive, and we consult with them on this sort of thing. So we're kind of working closely with the experts. All of the open data flows through our office as well, so we take a look at it. So we are worried about the mosaic effect, and right now a lot of our focus is on sort of the lower risk data than that sort of data. We do. Sorry,
It's okay.
I psyched you out there.
No.
There are ways to get that data or more sensitive data into people's hands. So de-identified versions of administrative data actually gets into researchers' hands through StatsMan's Research Data Center Network. And so there is some commercial data in that. And so our office does help direct people towards that sort of thing if it's appropriate as well.
Thank you. Another round of applause, please.